Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this brief video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, May the 19th, 2025. And I'm going to begin with a preview of the main astrological events taking place over the course of a week. And then I'm going to consider one topic, and that's basically going to be Benjamin Netanyahu and his horoscope. He's the Prime Minister of Israel. I might also look at the charts of Israel and Palestine. I'm not saying that I'm going to say anything dramatic, but there is a conjunction between the Sun and Uranus at the moment, and it does have an impact on Benjamin Netanyahu's horoscope. And having looked at Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel and Palestine again very briefly, I'm going to look at the I Ching for the week. So I'm going to cast the coins and do an I Ching reading for the week. If you want to watch it, you don't have to watch it. It only applies this reading to those who watch the I Ching section of this video. And this I Ching reading will have four areas. There'll be a general focus, and then I'm going to look at money, then business and career, and finally relationships. So let's start off by looking at the start positions for the week, the astrological start positions. So this is the chart for midnight, Monday the 19th, set for New York. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So here's the positions of the planets, and at the beginning of the week, the Sun is at 2826 Taurus. In other words, it's getting ready to move into Gemini. And additionally, Mars is at 1423 Leo. So that means that Mars is making a sesquiquadrate to Saturn. Mars and Saturn are 135 degrees apart. And I do regard this Mars-Saturn sesquiquadrate as being important. It might well be the most important event of the week. Mars and Saturn are a difficult pair. They can be. And they're perhaps made more difficult by the fact that Saturn is very close to the Aries point. Saturn is getting ready to move into Aries. So a planet which is conjunct the Aries point, or indeed is square, opposition, semi-square, sesquiquadrate, the Aries point, can be very powerful. And so Mars is sesquiquadrate the Aries point, Saturn conjunct the Aries point, and they're making a 135-degree aspect. So this aspect, this Mars sesquiquadrate Saturn, could be very frustrating. And, we shouldn't forget that Mars and Saturn are the two malefics, and we may be aware of bad things going on. Not necessarily affecting us, but in the world. And there may be a grimness with this Mars sesquiquadrate Saturn, made worse by the fact that Mercury is making a semi-square to Neptune on Monday. So Mercury at 1548 Taurus is making a semi-square to Neptune at 1 degree 36 Aries. So that creates confusion. So we may not be sure how bad things are. And one reason why things might be bad is because people don't know what they're getting themselves into. So this Mars sesquiquadrate Saturn could be a problem. On a personal level, it's more likely to be about frustration. It might be just difficult to get things done, and it may be irritating, and we might get angry. Then on Tuesday, the Sun moves into Gemini. London time, Sun moves into Gemini at 5 minutes to 8 in the evening. So if you're in Australia or New Zealand, actually that means the Sun won't move into Gemini until Wednesday. And if you're in Australia, if you're in sort of California, then Sun will go into Gemini, Tuesday just before noon, I think. And so that does create a change. The Gemini season has started in earnest, and the Sun is now in the same sign as Jupiter. And with the Sun in Gemini, there may be a feeling that things are easier. Things aren't so single-pointed. We've had all this stuff in Taurus. We've had we've had this Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, and it might have been rather exhausting. Just too much focus on one thing, and so Sun in Gemini might provide a little bit of variety, especially as the Sun actually makes a sextile to Neptune. That sextile to Neptune takes place on Thursday the 22nd, and so Sun sextile Neptune, we might be imaginative and maybe a little bit relaxed, and it may be a moment where we can get a perspective on things, but certainly not be completely focused. Sun sextile Neptune is just not an especially focused aspect. Then on Friday, we get another aspect to Neptune. Mars makes a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. Now, this aspect could be difficult. With Mars and Neptune, you think about putting your energy into the wrong things. Mars is about energy. Neptune is about not necessarily always being sure what we're trying to achieve. So Mars sesquiquadrate Neptune could be about, putting too much energy into the wrong things. And we may be tempted to do things which we later regret, and may be tempted to get into areas that perhaps are best avoided. And then over the weekend, we've got Sun trine Pluto. It's a reasonable aspect. Sun trine Pluto might give us some power and the ability to make things happen, but without having to have a big fight or an argument about it. And then, right at the end of the week, on Sunday, Saturn moves into Aries. Saturn moving into Aries is a big event, and so Saturn has been in Pisces for a long time, since the beginning of March 2023. Or I don't know about the beginning of March, certainly March 2023, and now it leaves Pisces into Aries. Now it does actually come back into Pisces briefly, I think later in the year, but what we have is Saturn moving into the sign of its fall. Saturn is not happy in Aries, and it will stay in Aries on and off for a couple of years. And so it could be quite a frustrating influence. You could also argue that looking at Jupiter and Saturn as a pair, that we have both Jupiter and Saturn in signs where they're not always comfortable. Saturn is in Aries, the sign of its fall. Jupiter is in Gemini, the sign of its detriment. So that's kind of interesting, though if you try to balance Jupiter and Saturn, you could say that Jupiter is, relatively speaking, not quite as weak compared to Saturn. So that may allow Jupiter to express itself more with Saturn moving into Aries, and especially once Jupiter goes into Cancer, which takes place next month. But it is a difficult thing, Saturn moving into Aries. It could be very frustrating. Saturn in Aries, we want to take the initiative, Saturn in Aries, but we can't. Aries is not the kind of place that Saturn works well in, and a number of people could be impacted. We shouldn't forget that Keir Starmer became British Prime Minister when early Libra was rising, and so very early Libra was rising. So the Starmer government has Saturn on its descendant from then on, and I think we're now going to start to see real problems for the Starmer government, the Starmer regime, now that Saturn moves into Aries. I know Starmer's already got problems, but I think we're going to see the problems perhaps that really get out of hand, and that might start to threaten Starmer's premiership in a major way. But I'll be talking about that in another video. So that's a week, and now let's have a quick look at Benjamin Netanyahu's chart. So here is Benjamin Netanyahu, and I understand he is a very polarizing figure. Some of you may regard him as just being absolutely horrible. Others may regard him as being someone who is doing his best for Israel. I'm not giving an opinion here. I'm just pointing out his chart. And the thing about Benjamin Netanyahu is that he's got Mars at 2645 Leo. Now, as far as Benjamin Netanyahu's ascendant is concerned, we don't really know his time of birth. But, I've looked at various possibilities for when he was born, and they all seem to be sort of late morning and all seem to suggest that he has Sagittarius rising. So I'm not saying he is born at 11:45 a.m., but it does seem that he has Sagittarius rising. And I may be wrong on that, but that seems to be the broad consensus. So, his Mars in Leo is suggestive of a man who is quite proud. He likes to do things his way, doesn't like to be contradicted. His sun is sextile Mars, so that sun sextile Mars, the concept of action, energy, making things happen is important to him. And so Uranus, we've got this Sun-Uranus conjunction. Well, we had it. We had it sort of. Should I say last week? Well, it's not really last week. I'm making this video on the 17th of May, so Saturday, 17th of May. So this weekend, 17th, 18th, is when he has it, and so it's quite an important aspect. He's got Sun on he's having transiting Sun conjunct his Mars, as it will always happen to him around this time of the year. But it's the fact that Uranus is involved here. So that Sun sextile Mars is really manifesting, and he is at the moment very much into his own power and what he can do and what he would like to do. And with Uranus aspecting his Mars, making the square to his Mars. So don't forget that the Sun-Uranus conjunction is here. It's conjunct Algol in his probably in his fifth house, square his Mars. So that conjunction square his Mars it's going to activate him, and it will also be making a quincunx to his Sun. So actually, over this week, the week starting on May the 19th, he will have Uranus quincunx his Sun. So Uranus quincunx Sun can be about inappropriate displays of energy, action, dynamism, which could cause trouble, or it just could be about the problem of unintended consequences. He thinks he's doing the right thing, at least as far as he's concerned. I notice that at the moment, there's a big incursion in Gaza. There's always a big incursion of some kind in Gaza, and there are also talks of some attempt at a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. But it's all rather tense, and it continues to be rather tense. But this Sun-Uranus conjunction may really make things especially difficult for him, and perhaps for Israel as well. And we just shouldn't forget that Donald Trump has his Mars at 26 Leo. So this Sun-Uranus conjunction is really bringing together the Mars of Netanyahu and the Mars of Trump. So these two men could be at loggerheads. And then there is the horoscope of Israel. So here is Israel's chart, and Israel has its Mars at 28 Leo. So Netanyahu's Mars is conjunct Israel's Mars. Now, one way of looking at that is to say that Netanyahu's actions could harness Israel's armed forces. That's one way of looking at it, because you could say that Mars in a national chart represents a country's armed forces. But as we saw with Trump and Netanyahu and Israel, maybe he's at odds with sections of the Israeli population, even with sections of the Israeli army. I mean, I've read stories that there are people in the Israeli army who are not happy with Benjamin Netanyahu's leadership. I have no idea whether that's true, but this Sun-Uranus conjunction is kind of bringing together the Mars of Israel and the Mars of Benjamin Netanyahu. And Uranus, as it moves through, the last degrees of Taurus, is going to make a square to Israel's Mars. Now, that square is going to be exact on, I think I make it around the 4th of June. So in a few weeks' time, Israel we'll have Uranus square its Mars, and also Israel has just had transiting Uranus on its Sun. So that could be difficult, and this does suggest that things are all the time getting stirred up. And then there's a horoscope of Palestine. I'm sure there are several horoscopes for Palestine. So one horoscope has, Palestine being born on November the 15th, 1988, declared in Algiers. And in this case, well, we've just had a full moon on Palestine's Sun. We had a full moon at 22 Scorpio, and Palestine has its Sun at 22 Scorpio. The Sun-Uranus conjunction is fairly close to the opposition of Palestine's Sun. It's also you've got it quite close to the ascendant, assuming that is the right time that Palestine's independence was declared. This took place in Algiers. You've got 29 Leo rising. So Uranus in late Taurus does continue to stir things up, and I think the fact that the Sun and Uranus are conjunct Taurus, I think is an issue for the Middle East, and I think it is going to be a particular focus. And we shouldn't forget that in general, Israel is a Taurean country, and so for the last few years, it's had Uranus going through its sun sign, and this really has stirred things up. So perhaps if you're Israeli, the Sun moving out of Taurus into Gemini is going to represent something of a relief. So let me now turn to the I Ching. So I'm now going to do an I Ching reading for the week. You do not have to watch it. This reading, it only applies to those watching the I Ching section of this video. So if you don't want your I Ching read, you just can stop watching the video. And this I Ching reading is going to have 4 sections. They're going to have a general section, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. So I asked the question, what is the week starting on Monday, May the 19th, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 34, the power of the great. And this is about the power we have. All of us have power, and all of us are aware of how this power fluctuates. Sometimes we feel that we don't have any power, we can't do anything. Other times we feel we are in control, and even if we don't have power, we feel that perhaps we need to do something to make things happen. And so the question is, what do we do about it? And this hexagram has three moving lines. The bottom line moves, third line moves, and the fifth line moves. And with the bottom line moving, it talks about the toe. I mean, in terms of the parts of the body, the bottom hexagram can represent the feet, or particular the toes. And so there is maybe power in the toe. And we might be aware of our own power. We might feel that we want to do something. But the question is, are we strong enough? Do we actually have the ability to see it through. And the I Ching is suggesting that we don't. And as far as toes and feet are concerned, one interpretation of it is that we decide we want to take the initiative, and with that first step, we hurt ourselves, we hurt our foot, and we don't get any further. So if you are keen to get going on something this week, you feel that now's the time, you really want to move forward, it may not work out. And certainly it may not work out to begin with. So it's important to wait. Yeah, you have power, but is it good enough? Are you really able to see it through? And the answer is probably no. But still, you might keep going. You might decide that you really want to make things happen. And then the third line moves. And so third line moves, well, that has the simple image of a goat being stuck. A goat represents sort of a powerful animal, a goat that is, quite impulsive. The I Ching often also talks about the ram in this with this hexagram. A ram wanting to bash its head against something, and so we could get really stuck if we try to move forward. And we've got the energy, we've got the enthusiasm, we've even maybe got the anger, but are we going to make any progress? And there is a danger that we just actually find that we do break free, but we're not strong enough. And then the fifth line moves, and fifth line in the I Ching is often quite fortunate. And in terms of a ram, it talks about losing a ram. If you're a farmer, you have this ram, and it's a real problem, and it cannot be disciplined. It just wants to do its own thing, and the farmer loses the ram. And the I Ching says, well, that's actually quite a good thing. It's good for all parties, because the farmer loses this problem animal, and from a ram's perspective, well, it's great because it's free. And so maybe with this fifth line moving, we start to realize that we don't have to do everything at once. We don't have to be super assertive, and it's okay to wait. And so, we have this power, but do we really want to use this power? Is it really necessary? And in the end, that's what we realize. And so that sounds somewhat boring, but we have to ask, what's it all about? And the power of the great. If we want to have a good week, we don't want to push it, and when we want to, in a way, stick to the straight and narrow. Stick to what we know and understand, and we mustn't be tempted to overdo it. Now, with all these moving lines, does mean we move to a different hexagram, and the hexagram it moves to is hexagram 47, which is oppression. Now, it's not quite as bad as it looks, oppression, and it just means that we've got things that we have to deal with, and we've got obligations, and might seem that these are unfair obligations. Perhaps someone else should have sorted them out, but it's all down to us. And this may be, part of the frustration we felt in the previous hexagram. We had all this energy, we had all this desire to get things done, and then we're left with oppression. And we do have a lot to do, but the thing is, we can do it. We'll be okay. And we've maybe learnt some discipline in the previous hexagram. We know that we can't expend all our energy at once, and we just get through it all, and the week ends, I won't say in a satisfactory way, because we're still going to feel a little bit hard done by, but it will be mission accomplished, even if that mission is a bit sort of bittersweet in the end. And turning to money, then the power of the great could be that we're very aware of the money we have got, and we're also aware that there could be more money available, and we certainly want to change things with money, and we might be of the view that through impulsiveness we can make something happen, and perhaps we feel we're now in the right position to get what we want. And the advice here is, well, possibly not. And the power of the great becomes a particular problem if we're in the mood for spending money. We might, reach the conclusion that we've got enough money to buy something we want. And the power of the great might suggest, well, maybe we haven't. Or if we try to spend money with a particular aim in mind, we might be disappointed. And so that first movement, that first attempt with the bottom line moving to create some action there, with money. Perhaps we think we can get hold of some money, or use money in a different way, or find a good way to invest money. I'm not giving financial advice here. That first action just doesn't seem to work out, and we've got the intention, but we just haven't got what it takes to see it through. And if we're involved in any form of financial struggle, perhaps we want to pick a financial argument with someone, then soon enough we're just going to get tied up in knots. The goat smashing its way into a hedge and just not being able to get out, and just a feeling of total frustration, and things just not working out. And then there is a point of realization here with the fifth line moving, and we realize that we don't necessarily have as much power as we thought we had, but it's a realization. And with that realization, we start to be more realistic, and we know that nothing is entirely easy money-wise, but we haven't got all the money in the world. And then we move to hexagram 47, which is oppression. Now that might sound bad, but it is also about responsibility and an awareness of the financial burdens on us. It's not good to have financial burdens, but the implication is that we can deal with these burdens. We may be able to get the books to balance, and that may have a lot to do with the previous hexagram. There were temptations to do things with money, but hopefully we held back. There were temptations to take things too far, but again, we hopefully realized that it was just too much for us. So not a great ending to the week, oppression, but we will be able to handle it. Don't worry. And then there is career and business, and it's, I'm afraid, going to be a similar message. So hexagram 34, the power of the great. So if you're working, or if you have a business, you feel that now's the time to take the initiative. The ram is an important symbol here with this hexagram. What do you want to do? Maybe you're looking for a job or a new business, and you feel you've got the energy, and you feel that now is the right time to make the move. And it appears that it may not be the right time. And that first line moving, indicates an attempt to take the initiative. Perhaps at the beginning of a week, one takes that initiative, and almost immediately it doesn't work, and we have to start again. There's even a possibility, because hexagram talks about damaging one's foot, is that first initiative could cause us embarrassment or maybe rebuffed. But if we keep going, if we keep trying to make an impact at work, or we were involved in some new business venture, we're trying something out for the first time, we could very quickly get stuck. And then by the fifth line, we realize that it's not working, and we have some self-honesty there. We're honest with ourselves about what we can and cannot do, and we then have to sort of return to normality. We just have to do things by the book, follow the straight and narrow, and then we're going to be okay. We may not be happy about it, especially as the hexagram it moves to is oppression. We may not feel that we're being respected. We may feel we've got too much work to do. Other people should be taking their share of a burden, and they're not. But that's the way it goes, and we'll be able to get things done, and I don't think there'll be too much damage. And finally, there is relationships. I don't know if relationships are important, but if they are important, then 34, the power of a great, means that you're trying your best to have an impact, to have an influence on another person, for whatever reason. This part of the I Ching section is not just about romantic relationships. It could be about other relationships, friendships, business partnerships, whatever. And you feel you've got the power to have an influence, that people are going to listen to you with the power of a great. Yet the reality may be different, and any attempt, at least at the beginning of a week, to take the initiative to get in touch with someone, to get closer to someone, may not work out. That first line is about stepping forward, and in the process potentially injuring oneself. So first initiatives might not work out. And also, if you spend a lot of time with another person, if you try to persuade them about something, if you try to move a relationship forward, then third line is about getting stuck, and you might just be involved in a difficult situation. You can't retreat, you can't go forward, and it's just not very easy. And then fifth line moves. Fifth line is about realization, and it could be about letting someone go, because one image connected with the fifth line is about having this ram that is difficult to control, and it's a pain, and you let the ram go, and it goes, and you feel unburdened of this ram, and the ram is free. So that could be about a relationship, or the beginning of a relationship, that you realize that it's just not working out, and you just let go of it. You stop worrying about it. Or it just might be that you understand your limitations, that there are limits to how much you're going to be able to influence another person, and there are limits to how far a relationship is going to go. But remember, this is just a hexagram. This is just a reading for 1 week. And then we get a movement, because we've got 3 moving lines, and it moves to hexagram 47, which is oppression. It's not a disastrous hexagram, but it probably means that as far as relationships are concerned, if you are involved in a relationship, that you just may feel that it is a bit of a burden. You perhaps feel just oppressed by the whole thing, and you may find that you're having to do more of the work than the other person is doing, and that might be one way of looking at it. Or it may just be that being in a relationship it feels like it's restricting your freedom. It's kind of oppressing you, but it's not oppressing you in an overly dramatic way, and that's just how you feel at the end of the week. And again, it's just not a great week for relationships. But don't do anything. Don't do anything dramatic. Don't feel that you have to do anything. And in certain cases, it may be about letting go of someone. You may be just holding them back, and give someone their freedom. Maybe that's part of a message. Again, it does rather depend on the situation. So that's my video for the week. I hope you found it useful. If you did find it useful, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be extremely grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. And I will talk to you again very soon.